The world woke up in absolute disbelief as breaking news flooded every major network, every social media feed, and every political discussion panel. Ukraine, after months of strategic silence and carefully planned military maneuvers, has executed a surprise operation that has left global analysts stunned. Crimea, a region long believed to be impenetrable and heavily fortified, has fallen overnight in a move that not even the most optimistic strategists predicted. This sudden shift has thrown the geopolitical landscape into a storm of reactions, both celebratory and deeply concerned, as leaders scramble to understand how such a dramatic event unfolded so quickly and with such precision. For years, Crimea has stood at the heart of tensions, a symbol of conflict, pride, and persistent dispute. Many believed it would become a decades-long standoff with no clear resolution in sight. Yet, in a matter of hours, the narrative has changed entirely, and the world is struggling to keep up with the consequences. Reports indicate that the operation was unlike anything seen in recent military history. Ukrainian forces did not launch a massive wave of traditional attacks, nor did they spend weeks slowly grinding toward key positions. Instead, they executed a combination of cyber warfare, misinformation tactics, drone strikes, and surgical ground movements that created a domino effect across the peninsula. Defensive units were caught completely off guard, communication lines were severed almost instantly, and entire strategic points fell with minimal resistance. By the time many defending soldiers realized what was happening, Ukrainian forces had already advanced deeper than anyone could have imagined. This was not merely a military victory, it was a masterclass in modern warfare, a demonstration of how intelligence, timing, and innovation can outperform even the most heavily fortified defenses. As news footage began to circulate, viewers around the world watched in awe as Ukrainian flags were raised over government buildings, checkpoints, and once restricted areas. Crowds of civilians, many of whom had been living in uncertainty for years, emerged from their homes waving blue and yellow flags, cheering soldiers, and crying tears of disbelief. Journalists captured scenes of people embracing troops, offering flowers, and shouting phrases of relief that this moment had finally arrived. For many Ukrainians, Crimea was not just territory. It was identity, history, and a symbol of unfinished struggle. The images of reunion families hugging soldiers, elderly residents expressing gratitude, and children waving flags became instant viral moments across the internet. Global media outlets replayed these clips repeatedly, analyzing the emotional impact and the political weight behind such a sudden shift. World leaders responded swiftly, some expressing support, others urging caution, and a few calling for emergency diplomatic discussions. The speed of the operation raised questions about intelligence failures, regional security, and the future balance of power in Eastern Europe. Statements poured in from capitals around the globe, each attempting to interpret what this unexpected development means for long-term stability. Analysts began debating the potential responses, the risk of escalation, and the likelihood of new negotiations emerging in the aftermath of such a bold move. The international community found itself at a crossroads, confronting a moment that could redefine alliances, reshape borders, and alter the trajectory of a conflict that has dominated headlines for years. Behind the political reactions lies the human impact, perhaps the most powerful part of this story. In many neighborhoods, residents who had avoided public expressions of identity for years suddenly found themselves celebrating openly. Flags that were once hidden away were brought out and displayed proudly in windows and streets. Families who had lived under restricted speech policies finally felt safe enough to speak their minds. Journalists reported stories of individuals who waited nearly a decade for this moment, people who shared memories of divided families, uncertain futures, and silent hopes that one day the peninsula would be reunited. These voices added depth to the narrative, turning a geopolitical event into a profoundly human story that resonated across cultures and countries. As videos of the operation spread, military experts began offering detailed breakdowns of how Ukraine achieved such a stunning victory. Many highlighted the importance of drone technology, which Ukraine has used with increasing sophistication throughout the conflict. Drones allowed forces to neutralize communication towers, disrupt radar systems, and disable armored vehicles without exposing troops to direct danger. Others pointed to advanced cyber attacks that reportedly shut down defense networks within minutes, leaving command structures unable to coordinate. Some experts suggested that psychological operations played a major role, creating confusion, panic, and hesitation among defending forces. By combining these methods, Ukraine created a cascading effect where every defensive weakness became amplified, opening paths for rapid advancement. Amid all the analysis, Ukrainian officials delivered speeches emphasizing unity, resilience, and the importance of this victory. They highlighted the strategic patience that led to the operation, the sacrifices made across the country, and the determination that fueled their actions. They spoke directly to citizens in Crimea, assuring them that they would be protected, supported, and integrated smoothly into the broader national structure. They also addressed the international community, urging diplomatic caution and calling for calm dialogue to prevent unnecessary escalation. These speeches were met with overwhelming support online, shared widely by global audiences who viewed the operation as a turning point in modern warfare. On the ground, however, the situation remained complex. Ukrainian forces began establishing security checkpoints, organizing humanitarian aid, and coordinating with local leaders to ensure safety and basic stability. The sudden shift created logistical challenges, from restoring power grids to managing transportation networks. Medical teams were dispatched to different regions to provide assistance to those who had been affected by years of tension and recent disruptions. Humanitarian organizations also began coordinating supply lines, preparing to send aid where needed. The world watched as soldiers shifted from combat roles to stabilizing forces, embodying a transition from conflict to recovery. As the first 24 hours passed, global markets reacted sharply. Energy prices fluctuated, stocks tied to defense industries swung rapidly, and currency values shifted as investors tried to assess the long-term implications. Economists warned that such a dramatic geopolitical event could have far-reaching consequences, particularly in regions that depend heavily on maritime trade routes passing near Crimea. Discussions emerged about sanctions, potential retaliation, and the stability of regional alliances. Financial analysts predicted a turbulent period ahead as governments and corporations recalibrated their strategies in response to the new reality. Social media platforms exploded with reactions, memes, emotional videos, and breaking updates. Millions of people engaged in discussions, debating the significance of the operation and speculating about what might come next. Some users expressed fear about possible escalation, while others praised the operation as a victory for sovereignty and self-determination. Influencers, journalists, and political commentators shared their insights, creating an overwhelming stream of content that made it difficult for many viewers to distinguish verified information. From speculation, platforms struggled to keep up with the demand for updates, and misinformation began circulating alongside legitimate news, prompting fact checkers to work overtime. Despite the chaos, one thing remained clear. This was a historic moment that would be studied for decades. The suddenness of Crimea's fall raised questions about the future of warfare, the role of technology, and the importance of intelligence. Schools, universities, and military academies would likely study the operation in detail, analyzing how a combination of strategy, timing, and innovation led to such a decisive victory. Historians would place this event among the most unexpected geopolitical shifts of the century, comparing it to previous turning points that reshaped international relations. Political scientists began drafting essays and theories, predicting how this moment would influence global diplomacy, regional alliances, and future conflicts. As the world processed the aftermath, personal stories from residents continued to pour in. Some described years of waiting and wondering whether change was possible. Others recalled moments of hardship, uncertainty, and longing for connection with the rest of Ukraine. Many expressed gratitude that the transition occurred with minimal violence, crediting both the strategic execution of the operation and the restraint shown by local residents who chose stability over confrontation. These stories humanized the event, reminding global audiences that beyond the headlines, real families, individuals, and communities were living through a dramatic transformation. Military analysts emphasized that the operation demonstrated a new era of conflict, one defined not only by weapons, but by information, timing, and technology. They highlighted how cyber operations can neutralize traditional defenses, how drones can shift the balance of power, and how psychological tactics can dismantle an enemy's resolve without direct confrontation. They predicted that nations around the world would now adapt their strategies, learning from Ukraine's example and preparing for a future where traditional warfare may no longer be the dominant model. This shift, they argued, could redefine international security discussions for years to come. As night fell across the region, celebrations continued in cities across Ukraine. Fireworks illuminated the sky over Kiev, gatherings formed in Odessa, and people filled public squares in Lviv. Musicians played patriotic songs, crowds danced, and flags waved proudly as residents marked a moment they would likely tell future generations about. The joy was palpable, a collective expression of relief, pride, and hope for a future free from conflict. Families gathered around televisions discussing the significance of the event, sharing memories of the past and imagining the possibilities that now lay ahead. Throughout the night, global news anchors continued providing updates, interviewing experts, and analyzing the potential geopolitical ripple effects. They discussed the likelihood of negotiations, possible international responses, and the importance of maintaining stability in the region. They emphasized that while the operation was a striking success, the next steps would require careful diplomacy, cooperation, and attention to humanitarian needs. They urged viewers to understand the complexity of the moment, refusing to oversimplify a situation with deep historical roots and emotional significance. In the coming days, the world will continue watching closely. The fallout, whether diplomatic or strategic, will shape policies and alliances for years. Nations will reassess their security strategies, reconsider their diplomatic stances, and adjust their long-term plans in light of this unprecedented outcome. Ukraine, meanwhile, will face the monumental task of rebuilding, stabilizing, and integrating the newly liberated region. Leaders will need to address economic challenges, social divisions, and infrastructure needs while maintaining unity and preventing further conflict. But for now, The world remains captivated by the sheer boldness and brilliance of Ukraine's surprise operation. Crimea's overnight fall will remain one of the most shocking events in recent history, a reminder that even the most entrenched geopolitical realities can shift in an instant. The operation demonstrated not only military strategy, but also national resilience, creativity, and determination. It showed the world that surprises can still happen, that history can change direction suddenly, and that the human spirit remains capable of astonishing achievements even in the darkest times. This moment will echo for generations. It will be recounted in books, documentaries, classrooms, and political discussions around the world. And as people look back on this day, they will remember the shock, the celebration, and the powerful reminder that history is not fixed. It is shaped by those bold enough to change it.